It was August 12, 1904, and Tsarina Alexandra Fyodorovna of Russia had just given birth to her youngest child. Before now, she had had 4 children, all girls. Under Russian law, women were prohibited from ascending to the throne unless there were no eligible males, which meant that if Alexandra did not have a son, she would not produce the next heir. As Alexandra awoke from the chloroform she had been using during the birth, all smiles were upon her. "Oh, it cannot be true," she said. "It cannot be true. Is it really a boy?" Her first son and heir to the throne had been born. Her husband, Tsar Nicholas II of Russia, wrote with relief and great pride in his diary, "Alex gave birth to a son, whom with prayer we called Alexei. There are no words to be able to thank God sufficiently for the consolation that has been given us during this time of great difficulty." The country flew into celebration at the birth of the young tsarevich. As Alexandra's lady-in-waiting Baroness Sophie Buxhovden put it, "We were nearly deafened by the church bells ringing that day." But for the royal family, the festivities were short-lived. After little Alexei's umbilical cord was cut, his blood failed to clot and he bled for hours. His mother soon realized Alexei had the royal disease. This was a term used to describe hemophilia for its particular prevalence in European royal lineages. It is thought the source of the disease began with Queen Victoria, who had a spontaneous mutation. The sex-linked malady was then passed on to some of her children. Because the mutated gene responsible for hemophilia is located on the X chromosome, the disease is much less likely to affect women, as they have a second X chromosome that will most likely mask the effects of the mutation. In the diagram, all the women shown are carriers of the mutation, meaning they could pass it on to their children, but did not experience the symptoms themselves. The men depicted, on the other hand, directly suffered from hemophilia. As fate would have it, Alexei's mother Alexandra was a granddaughter of Queen Victoria, and as such, happened to be a carrier. This is how Alexei inherited the deadly disease. This fact was hidden from the Russian public out of fear the young boy would be perceived as a weak future leader, but this heavy secret was painful for the Tsar and Tsarina. As Alexandra put it, "Oh, what anguish it was not to let others see the knife digging in one." Alexei's hemophilia made him a great source of worry to his parents. During his christening, which occurred no more than a month after his birth, his parents were so afraid of Alexei being dropped that the woman carrying him wore rubber soles so as to prevent slipping. At 5 years old, Alexei's parents appointed 2 Navy sailors, Petty Officer Andrei Derivenko and Seaman Clementy Nagorny, to shadow him at all times, ensuring he did not hurt himself. Alexei was a lively, mischievous child. He is said to have taken great pride in his role as tsarevich, particularly the military aspects of his future position, and was highly aware of his prospective power. In his early childhood, he enjoyed jumping in front of the guards at the Alexandra Palace because each time they would salute him. The young boy apparently repeated this so many times that Nicholas forbade the guards from saluting Alexei unless another family member was with him. In another instance, Alexei, aged just 6, entered his father's study to find the foreign minister sitting and waiting to see Nicholas. The young boy apparently scolded the man, yelling, "When the heir to the Russian throne enters a room, people must get up." Both as a result of his illness and his position as the only heir to the throne, his parents often gave in to Alexei's demands. Nicholas is said to have affectionately called his son Alexei the Terrible. Alexei's love for the military only deepened as he grew. Like the Romanov men before him, Alexei grew up wearing sailor uniforms. From a young age, Nicholas prepared his son for a future as Tsar of Russia. Alexei was often brought by his father to participate in official ceremonies, military reviews, and church services. When Russia joined World War I, Nicholas took a direct role in the military effort as commander-in-chief of the Russian army. For a brief time, Alexei joined his father at the military headquarters. He is said to have enjoyed the military life, eating the soldiers' black bread and refusing meals at the palace because, he said, "It's not what the soldiers eat." He grew especially fond of the other soldiers, and they of him. One British officer, John Hanbury Williams, recalled, "As time went on and his shyness wore off, he treated us like old friends, and had always some bit of fun with us. With me, it was to make sure that each button of my coat was properly fastened, a habit which naturally made me take great care to have 1 or 2 unbuttoned, in which case he used to at once stop and tell me that I was untidy again, give a sigh at my lack of attention to these details, and stop and carefully button me up again. In 1916, the 12-year-old boy was appointed Lance Corporal, a symbolic title that filled the boy with immense pride. Despite his privileged upbringing, Alexei could also be gentle, thoughtful, and kind. All those around him spoke of how easily he could feel deep attachment to others, and how he would always try to do his best to help them, a result of his own understanding of immense physical suffering. Although he was aware of his formidable position, he was also fully conscious that he may not live to see adulthood. When he was just 10 years old, his sister Olga found him lying on his back staring at the clouds. When she asked what he was doing, the young boy answered, "Oh, so many things. I enjoy the sun and the beauty of summer as long as I can. Who knows whether one of these days I shall not be prevented from doing it." All four sisters adored their little Alyosha, as they called him. He was especially attached to his sister Anastasia, the youngest Romanov daughter, as the mischievous youngest children would often share in playful antics. Alexei's illness drew the Romanov family unusually close, fostering a bond that was far more intimate than what was typical for an imperial household. Alexei's tutor, Pierre Guillard, recalled, "Alexei was the center of this united family, the focus of all its hopes and affections. His sisters worshipped him. He was his parents' pride and joy. When he was well, the palace was transformed. Everyone and everything in it seemed bathed in sunshine." But when Alexei was unwell, the entire imperial family was unwell. Due to his condition, Alexei would lapse into periods of intense physical pain. Minor injuries could have the most catastrophic effects, and even nosebleeds could be life-threatening. The pain was most poignant when blood would accumulate in his joints, crushing his bones and pushing his nerves. At just 3 years old, Alexei suffered the first of many episodes marked by intense pain and temporary paralysis. While he was playing in the Alexandra Park, he fell and hit his leg. The fall, which to another boy would have been a small bruise, was a critical injury to Alexei. Told that the doctors could do nothing, the desperate Alexandra called upon a peasant monk named Rasputin to try to heal her son. Rasputin recited prayers over Alexei, saying, "Your pain is going away, you will soon be well, you must thank God for healing you, and now go to sleep." Miraculously, the next day, Alexei was better. This marked the beginning of the family's relationship with the controversial Rasputin. Years later, in 1912, while on vacation in Poland, the 8-year-old Alexei bruised his hip while jumping into a boat. Although the initial injury was not severe, while in a turbulent carriage drive with his mother in the woods almost a month later, the accumulation of blood vessels forming the bruise ruptured in his upper thigh. This gave way to another intense period of physical suffering for the young boy. His father wrote in a letter, "The poor little one suffered terribly. The pain seized him in spasms and was repeated almost every quarter of an hour. He was delirious from fever day and night, sat up in bed, and pain would immediately begin from movement. He could hardly sleep and couldn't cry either. He just moaned and uttered, 'Lord, have mercy.'" His mother reportedly refused to leave his bedside, and his father would often rush to weep in his study when he saw Alexei screaming in such agony. This, his parents thought, would be the end for their beloved son. Alexei received the last sacrament on October 8, 1912, and a few days later, Alexei's impending death was publicly announced. Again, Alexandra implored the help of Rasputin. Alexandra received a short telegram from him in response, stating, "The little one will not die. Do not allow the doctors to bother him too much." Another miracle. Alexei's condition began to improve, and within a few weeks, he had recovered. There have been many theories as to why Rasputin's treatment proved so effective to the boy. Some have suggested he used hypnotism, others that he gave Alexei exotic herbs, or that he simply timed his participation to only appear when the boy was already healing. Regardless of the reason, Rasputin's success solidified Alexandra's faith in his holy healing abilities, and he became her close confidant. As for Tsar Nicholas's opinion of the mysterious Rasputin, Alexei's tutor Guillard wrote, "The Tsar had resisted the influence of Rasputin for a long time. At the beginning, he had tolerated him because he dared not weaken the Tsarina's faith in him, a faith which kept her alive. He did not like to send him away, for if Alexei Nikolaevich had died, in the eyes of the mother, he would have been the murderer of his own son." Because of Rasputin's increasing involvement with the royal family, public sentiments towards the Russian rulers began to decline. The people harbored severe mistrust of Rasputin, seeing him as a dangerous influence corrupting the royal family. Some even suspected his influence was so great with Alexandra that the two had an affair. Rasputin was murdered in 1916 by Russian nobles in an attempt to save the monarchy's reputation. It is said Alexei was deeply affected by his death. Whatever Rasputin may have been to the world, He was a figure of hope for Alexei, a chance that maybe his illness could be somewhat eased, if not cured, by the self-proclaimed holy healer. In 1917, the February Revolution took place, which aimed to overthrow the monarchy in Russia. On March 15th of that year, Tsar Nicholas officially abdicated the throne, and the family was placed under house arrest at the Alexandra Palace that same day by the new provisional government. In August, the captives were moved to Tobolsk, Siberia. In this new location, Alexei wrote in his diary of immense boredom. He was sometimes allowed to play with the kitchen boy, Leonid Ivanovich Sednev, who would become Alexei's last friend. Even in confinement, the imperial family drew strength from their unity, finding solace in the simple fact that they remained together. It is unsure what the exact cause was, but it was during this imprisonment that Alexei suffered another hemorrhage, which would be his last critical injury. He grew so ill that when Lenin's Communist Party, the Bolsheviks, who had overthrown the provisional government in the October Revolution, decided to relocate the family to a more secluded house in Yekaterinburg, Alexei and 3 of his sisters temporarily stayed behind. For the remaining weeks of his life, Alexei was confined not only to a house, but also a wheelchair. On the 17th of July, 1918, the royal family was awoken from their sleep and told they must dress as they were being moved. They were instructed to descend to the basement. It was Nicholas who carried his own son down the flights of stairs to the secluded cellar. Alexandra requested a chair for both herself and her ailing son so that he may sit, but once they were all in place, the Bolshevik commander Yakov Yurovsky announced that they were to be executed. Nicholas was so distressed he asked Yurovsky to repeat himself. I cannot imagine how frightened the family must have been in those final, brutal moments. The firing squad began shooting. Allegedly, the guards targeted Nicholas, Alexandra, and 2 male servants first, then turned to the children and opened fire. Alexei, still seated, endured a horrifying fate. The bullets failed to kill him swiftly. He screamed as the executioners began to frantically stab him with the bayonets. In his grim recount of the massacre, Yurovsky wrote, "Nothing seemed to work. Though injured, he continued to live." At last, Yurovsky stepped forward and fired 2 shots at Alexei's head, ending the life of the last heir to the Russian throne. Alexei and one of his sisters were buried separately from the rest of the family. When the bodies of the Romanov family were found, the 2 bodies missing gave rise to speculation that Alexei had somehow survived. This hope was fueled in part by the disturbing nature of the scene itself and the public's outrage at the execution of children. Perhaps, amid the horror, the boy, just 2 weeks shy of his 14th birthday, had lived. The 2 missing bodies were discovered in 2007, one in possession of a striped material that is thought to have come from Alexei's blue and white striped undershirt. Just a year later, forensic evidence proved that Alexei and his sister had both died along with their family. Alexei was more than just the last heir to a crumbling empire. He was a young boy full of life, playfulness, and quiet strength, who endured immense suffering with remarkable resilience. To his family, he was their joy and their hope, the baby of the family. To the Romanov dynasty, he was the future. The haunting story of the boy who might have been Tsar lingers, and Alexei remains an innocent casualty in the fall of Imperial Russia.